The leader of the criminals pulled a knife from his jacket, its blade gleaming dangerously in the afternoon sunlight. He waved it toward Chen while shouting threats in broken English mixed with Thai. The other two men spread out to surround the karate master, thinking they had trapped an easy target. They had no idea they were about to witness something that would haunt their dreams for years to come. Chen's expression remained completely calm as he observed the knife. His sensei had taught him to read an opponent's intentions through their body language, and he could see that this young man had never been in a real fight. The way he held the weapon, the trembling in his hands, his wide stance, everything screamed inexperience. The karate master had faced armed opponents many times during his training, and this situation felt almost routine to him. Without warning, Chen moved with lightning speed that defied his age. His right hand shot forward in a perfect knife hand strike, hitting a pressure point on the leader's wrist with surgical precision. The criminal's hand went completely numb instantly, and the knife clattered harmlessly to the ground. Before anyone could react, Chen grabbed the man's arm and used his own momentum against him, throwing him over his shoulder in a flawless judo throw. The leader crashed into a pile of empty wooden crates with a tremendous noise that echoed through the alley. He lay there groaning, completely stunned by what had just happened. The other two criminals stared in disbelief at their unconscious friend, then looked back at Chen with newfound fear in their eyes. This wasn't the helpless old man they had expected to intimidate. The second criminal, a stocky man with numerous tattoos covering his arms, charged at Chen with his fists raised. He threw a wild punch aimed at the karate master's head, but Chen simply stepped to the side and let the man's own force carry him past. As the attacker stumbled forward, Chen delivered a precise strike to his solar plexus that dropped him to his knees, gasping for air. The third criminal, realizing his friends were no match for this mysterious old man, turned to run away. But Chen's training had prepared him for this too. With one fluid motion, he kicked a small stone that was lying on the ground. The stone flew through the air with incredible accuracy, striking the fleeing man in the back of his knee. He tumbled forward and landed face first in a pile of garbage bags. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 30 seconds. 3 grown men lay defeated while Chen stood completely unruffled, not even breathing heavily. The flower vendor stared at him with her mouth open, unable to believe what she had just witnessed. She had never seen anyone move with such speed and precision, especially not a grandfather wearing simple street clothes. But the real shock was yet to come. As Chen bent down to check on the unconscious leader, making sure he wasn't seriously injured, 2 figures in impressive military uniforms appeared at the entrance of the alley. The royal guards had arrived just in time to witness the end of the fight. They stood frozen, trying to process what they had just seen. Captain Somchai, the senior guard, had been protecting the royal family for 15 years. He was an expert in multiple martial arts himself and had trained with some of the best fighters in Thailand. But he had never seen anyone move with the fluid grace and devastating effectiveness that he had just witnessed from this elderly stranger. His partner, Sergeant Niran, was equally amazed. The flower vendor found her voice and began explaining rapidly in Thai what had happened. She told the guards how these criminals had been threatening her, trying to steal her day's earnings, and how this brave man had stepped in to protect her. Her words tumbled out in a rush of gratitude and excitement as she praised Chen's incredible courage. Chen slowly stood up and turned to face the royal guards. He bowed respectfully, as was proper when meeting officials of their rank. His movements were humble and dignified, showing no pride or arrogance despite his impressive victory. The guards found themselves in an unusual situation. They had come to investigate a disturbance and instead found themselves witnessing an act of heroism. Captain Somchai approached Chen carefully, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon, not because he feared this elderly man, but because he had just seen him defeat 3 criminals with techniques that seemed almost supernatural. The captain's training told him to be cautious around anyone with such obvious fighting skills, regardless of their age or appearance. What happened next would change everything. Instead of congratulating Chen or thanking him for stopping the criminals, Captain Somchai made a decision that shocked everyone present, including his own partner. Captain Somchai drew his weapon and pointed it directly at Chen, barking orders in Thai for the karate master to get on the ground immediately. His reasoning was simple but flawed. Anyone capable of defeating 3 men so easily must be dangerous to public safety. The captain had never seen civilians fight with such skill, and his military training made him suspicious of Chen's abilities rather than appreciative of his heroic actions. Chen raised his hands slowly, confusion evident on his weathered face. He had just helped an innocent woman and stopped 3 criminals, yet he was being treated like the threat. The flower vendor began shouting at the guards, trying to explain that Chen was the hero, not the criminal. Her voice cracked with emotion as she pointed at the unconscious thugs lying around the alley. Sergeant Niran looked uncomfortable with his partner's decision, but didn't dare contradict a superior officer in public. The Royal Guards were trained to present a united front in all situations. However, he could see that something was terribly wrong with this scenario. The evidence was clear. Chen had protected an innocent person, and the real criminals were scattered around the alley like broken toys. The situation grew more tense when Captain Somchai decided to physically restrain Chen while they sorted out what had happened. He approached the karate master with handcuffs, still keeping his weapon trained on him. Chen remained perfectly still, his hands raised, showing no signs of resistance. His calm demeanor only made the captain more suspicious. In his experience, innocent people were usually more emotional when wrongly accused. What Captain Somchai didn't know was that Chen had spent decades learning to control his emotions and reactions. The karate master's training had taught him that anger and frustration were enemies of clear thinking. Even in this unjust situation, he maintained his composure and tried to think of the best way to resolve the misunderstanding without anyone getting hurt. As the captain reached for Chen's wrist to apply the handcuffs, disaster struck. One of the criminals, the tattooed man who had been gasping for air, had quietly recovered enough to grab the knife that had fallen earlier. Driven by rage and humiliation at being defeated by an old man, he lunged at Chen from behind, aiming, the blade at his back. The flower vendor screamed a warning, but Captain Somchai was too close to Chen to turn and fire his weapon safely. In that split second, the captain found himself in an impossible position. The man he had been treating as a threat was about to be murdered by the real criminal, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Chen's years of training kicked in, automatically. Without even turning around to look, he sensed the attack coming through the sound of footsteps and the change in air pressure behind him. In one lightning-fast motion, he spun around and launched a devastating kick that would be talked about for years to come. His foot connected with the attacking criminal's solar plexus with such force that the man flew backward through the air. The criminal crashed into Captain Somchai with tremendous impact, sending both men tumbling to the ground in a tangle of limbs. The captain's weapon discharged accidentally as he fell, the bullet striking harmlessly into the sky. The knife flew from the criminal's hand and embedded itself in a wooden fence post, vibrating from the force of impact. Sergeant Niran watched in amazement as Chen's kick had not only stopped a potentially deadly attack, but had also inadvertently saved his partner from a knife wound. The precision and power of the technique were unlike anything he had seen in his military career. Chen hadn't just kicked a criminal. He had calculated the exact angle and force needed to neutralize the threat while protecting everyone else in the alley. Captain Somchai lay on the ground beneath the unconscious criminal, struggling to catch his breath and understand what had just happened. The impact had knocked the wind out of him, but he was uninjured thanks to the criminal's body absorbing most of the force. As his head cleared, he began to realize the magnitude of his mistake in treating Chen as a threat. The flower vendor had witnessed the entire sequence of events and was now crying tears of relief and gratitude. She had seen Chen save not only her life but also the life of the very guard who had been trying to arrest him. Her faith in human goodness had been restored by this remarkable man's actions. Chen stood perfectly still once again, his hands raised, waiting to see how the guards would react to this new development. He had just kicked a member of the Royal Guard, even though it was to save the man's life. In Thailand, such an action could be considered an attack on the monarchy itself, punishable by years in prison or worse. The silence in the alley was deafening as everyone processed what had just occurred. The unconscious criminal lay sprawled across Captain Somchai, the knife still quivering in the fence post, and Chen stood like a statue waiting for judgment. What happened next would determine whether he would be hailed as a hero or arrested as a criminal. Sergeant Niran helped his partner push the unconscious criminal off his chest and get back to his feet. Captain Somchai stood up slowly, brushing dirt from his uniform while staring at Chen with a mixture of confusion and growing respect. The captain's entire worldview had been shaken in the span of a few minutes. He had drawn his weapon on the very man who had just saved his life from a knife attack. Within minutes, the narrow alley filled with additional royal guards, police officers, and emergency medical personnel. Someone had called for backup after hearing the gunshot, and now the scene looked like a small war zone. The three criminals were being treated by paramedics, while senior officers tried to piece together what had actually happened in this chaotic situation. Colonel Prasert, the commanding officer of the Royal Guard unit, arrived to personally investigate the incident involving his men. He was a decorated veteran with 30 years of military service and a reputation for being fair but thorough. The colonel interviewed each witness separately, starting with the flower vendor, who provided a detailed account of Chen's heroic actions from beginning to end. The woman's testimony was passionate and clear. She explained how the criminals had threatened her, how Chen had intervened to protect her, and how he had later saved Captain Somchai's life with that incredible kick. Her words painted Chen as a guardian angel who had appeared just when she needed help most. The colonel listened carefully, taking detailed notes and asking specific questions about the sequence of events. When Colonel Prasert interviewed Captain Somchai, the conversation was more complex. The captain had to admit that he had made an error in judgment by treating Chen as a threat, instead of recognizing him as a hero. His military pride was wounded, but his honesty compelled him to tell the complete truth about what had happened, including how Chen's kick had saved his life. Sergeant Niran's account supported everything the other witnesses had said. He described Chen's incredible fighting skills, his calm demeanor throughout the entire incident, and the precision of that final kick that had stopped the knife attack. The sergeant also mentioned how Chen had never shown any aggression toward the guards, even when he was being wrongly accused and threatened with arrest. The medical examination of the three criminals revealed something fascinating. Despite being thoroughly defeated in combat, none of them had suffered any serious injuries. Chen had used exactly enough force to neutralize each threat without causing permanent damage. This level of control impressed the colonel, who understood how difficult it was to calibrate force so precisely during a high-stress situation. Security cameras from nearby buildings had captured parts of the incident, providing video evidence that supported the witnesses' accounts. The footage clearly showed Chen protecting the flower vendor, the criminals attacking him, and his defensive actions throughout the encounter. Most importantly, it showed the knife attack on Chen and his life-saving kick that had protected Captain Somchai. Colonel Prasert found himself in an unprecedented situation. Protocol demanded that he investigate any incident involving a royal guard being kicked, even if it happened during the course of saving that guard's life. However, every piece of evidence pointed to Chen being a hero rather than a criminal. The colonel had never encountered a case quite like this one. The questioning of Chen himself was the most revealing part of the investigation. The karate master spoke quietly and humbly about his actions, showing no pride or boastfulness about his fighting skills. He explained that he had learned martial arts to protect others, not to seek glory or attention. His respectful manner and genuine concern for everyone's welfare impressed all the officers present. When asked about his background, Chen revealed that he had been teaching karate to underprivileged children in Bangkok for over 20 years. He ran a small dojo in one of the city's poorest neighborhoods, providing free classes to kids who couldn't afford proper training elsewhere. Many of his former students had gone on to become successful adults who credited Chen with keeping them away from gangs and crime. The colonel discovered that Chen held legitimate black belt rankings in multiple martial arts disciplines and had competed internationally during his younger years. He was well known in martial arts circles throughout Thailand, with a reputation for both skill and character. Several prominent martial artists vouched for his integrity when contacted by the investigating officers. As the investigation continued, word of the incident began to spread beyond the immediate area. Local news reporters had picked up the story of an elderly karate master who had defeated 3 criminals and saved a royal guard's life with a single kick. The tale was spreading through social media and local news outlets faster than the officials could control it. The flower vendor, whose name was Mrs. Siriporn, had become Chen's biggest advocate. She told everyone who would listen about how this remarkable man had risked his own safety to protect her from dangerous criminals. Her emotional gratitude and detailed account of events were compelling evidence of Chen's heroic character. By evening, Colonel Prasert had completed his investigation and reached his conclusions. The evidence overwhelmingly supported Chen's version of events and painted him as a hero rather than a criminal. However, the colonel still faced a delicate situation. A civilian had physically struck a royal guard, even if it was to save that guard's life. Colonel Prasert called an emergency meeting with his superior officers and representatives from the royal palace to discuss Chen's unprecedented case. The room was filled with high-ranking military officials, legal advisors, and palace administrators, all trying to determine the appropriate response to this unique situation. Never before had they dealt with a civilian who had simultaneously saved a guard's life and technically committed an offense against royal authority. The legal advisors explained that according to strict interpretation of Thai law, any physical contact with a royal guard could be considered an attack on the crown itself. However, they also acknowledged that Chen's actions had clearly been defensive and life-saving rather than aggressive. The case presented a complex legal puzzle that had no clear precedent in Thai jurisprudence. Captain Somchai was called to give his personal testimony to this high-level committee. Standing before some of the most powerful people in Thailand, he spoke with complete honesty about how Chen had saved his life. The captain's voice trembled with emotion as he described watching the knife-wielding criminal lunging toward Chen's back, knowing he was powerless to prevent the attack. The captain went on to explain how Chen's kick had not only stopped the criminal, but had also inadvertently protected him from injury. The force and precision of the technique had been calculated to neutralize the threat, while causing minimal harm to everyone involved. Captain Somchai concluded his testimony by stating that he owed his life to Chen's split-second heroic action. News of the incident had now spread throughout Bangkok and beyond. Social media was buzzing with videos of the security camera footage and interviews with witnesses. The story had captured the public imagination. An elderly karate master who had protected the innocent and saved a royal guard's life was the kind of hero people wanted to celebrate in uncertain times. Public opinion was overwhelmingly in favor of Chen. Thousands of comments on social media praised his courage, skill, and selfless character. Many people shared their own stories of Chen's kindness, including former students who credited him with changing their lives for the better. The mounting public support created additional pressure on officials to handle the case fairly. Mrs. Siriporn, the flower vendor Chen had protected, had become something of a local celebrity herself. News crews interviewed her repeatedly, and she never missed an opportunity to praise Chen's heroic actions. Her emotional testimony about his courage and kindness was being broadcast across Thailand, further building public sympathy for the karate master. The 3 criminals Chen had defeated were now facing multiple charges, including attempted robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and attacking a civilian. Their previous criminal records revealed a pattern of targeting elderly victims, making Chen's intervention even more heroic in the public eye. The contrast between their cowardly behavior and Chen's selfless courage was stark and clear. Representatives from the royal palace had been quietly conducting their own investigation into Chen's background and character. They discovered his decades of community service, his reputation for teaching discipline and respect to young people, and his unwavering loyalty to Thailand. The palace officials found no evidence of any political motivations or anti-monarchist sentiments in Chen's actions. After 3 days of deliberation, Colonel Prasert was summoned to receive the final decision from the highest levels of government. The meeting took place in an ornate conference room within the royal palace complex, with representatives from the monarchy, military, and justice system present. The gravity of the situation was evident in everyone's serious expressions and formal demeanor. The decision that emerged from this high-level consultation shocked everyone involved, including Colonel Prasert himself. Rather than pursuing charges against Chen for striking a royal guard, the palace had decided to take an entirely different approach. They recognized that Chen's actions represented the highest ideals of Thai values, protecting the innocent, showing courage in the face of danger, and serving others before oneself. The announcement that followed would surprise the entire nation. Instead of being prosecuted, Chen would be officially honored by the royal palace for his heroic actions. The ceremony would acknowledge both his protection of Mrs. Siraporn and his life-saving intervention that had protected Captain Somchai from serious injury or death. This unprecedented decision sent shockwaves through Thai society and the international martial arts community. Never before had someone who had physically struck a royal guard been honored rather than punished. The decision demonstrated remarkable wisdom and justice from the Thai leadership, recognizing that true loyalty to the crown meant protecting its citizens and upholding righteousness. Colonel Prasert was tasked with personally delivering this news to Chen, who had been staying quietly at his small apartment while the investigation proceeded. The colonel approached this duty with mixed emotions, relief that justice was being served, but also amazement at the extraordinary turn of events that had led to this moment. When Chen heard the news, his reaction was characteristically humble and dignified. He expressed gratitude for the fair treatment he had received, but insisted that he had simply done what any decent person should do in that situation. His lack of pride or expectation of reward further impressed Colonel Prasert and reinforced the wisdom of the palace's decision. Colonel Prasert called an emergency meeting with his superior officers and representatives from the royal palace to discuss Chen's unprecedented case. The room was filled with high-ranking military officials, legal advisors, and palace administrators, all trying to determine the appropriate response to this unique situation. Never before had they dealt with a civilian who had simultaneously saved a guard's life and technically committed an offense against royal authority. The legal advisors explained that according to strict interpretation of Thai law, any physical contact with a royal guard could be considered an attack on the crown itself. However, they also acknowledged that Chen's actions had clearly been defensive and life-saving rather than aggressive. The case presented a complex legal puzzle that had no clear precedent in Thai jurisprudence. Captain Somchai was called to give his personal testimony to this high-level committee. Standing before some of the most powerful people in Thailand, he spoke with complete honesty about how Chen had saved his life. The captain's voice trembled with emotion as he described watching the knife-wielding criminal lunging toward Chen's back, knowing he was powerless to prevent the attack. The captain went on to explain how Chen's kick had not only stopped the criminal, but had also inadvertently protected him from injury. The force and precision of the technique had been calculated to neutralize the threat while causing minimal harm to everyone involved. Captain Somchai concluded his testimony by stating that he owed his life to Chen's split-second heroic action. News of the incident had now spread throughout Bangkok and beyond. Social media was buzzing with videos of the security camera footage and interviews with witnesses. The story had captured the public imagination. An elderly karate master who had protected the innocent and saved a royal guard's life was the kind of hero people wanted to celebrate in uncertain times. Public opinion was overwhelmingly in favor of Chen. Thousands of comments on social media praised his courage, skill, and selfless character. Many people shared their own stories of Chen's kindness, including former students who credited him with changing their lives for the better. The mounting public support created additional pressure on officials to handle the case fairly. Mrs. Siraporn, the flower vendor Chen had protected, had become something of a local celebrity herself. News crews interviewed her repeatedly, and she never missed an opportunity to praise Chen's heroic actions. Her emotional testimony about his courage and kindness was being broadcast across Thailand, further building public sympathy for the karate master. The three criminals Chen had defeated were now facing multiple charges, including attempted robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and attacking a civilian. Their previous criminal records revealed a pattern of targeting elderly victims, making Chen's intervention even more heroic in the public eye. The contrast between their cowardly behavior and Chen's selfless courage was stark and clear. Representatives from the royal palace had been quietly conducting their own investigation into Chen's background and character. They discovered his decades of community service, his reputation for teaching discipline and respect to young people, and his unwavering loyalty to Thailand. The palace officials found no evidence of any political motivations or anti-monarchist sentiments in Chen's actions. After 3 days of deliberation, Colonel Prasert was summoned to receive the final decision from the highest levels of government. The meeting took place in an ornate conference room within the royal palace complex, with representatives from the monarchy, military, and justice system present. The gravity of the situation was evident in everyone's serious expressions and formal demeanor. The decision that emerged from this high-level consultation shocked everyone involved, including Colonel Prasert himself. Rather than pursuing charges against Chen for striking a royal guard, the palace had decided to take an entirely different approach. They recognized that Chen's actions represented the highest ideals of Thai values, protecting the innocent, showing courage in the face of danger, and serving others before oneself. The announcement that followed would surprise the entire nation. Instead of being prosecuted, Chen would be officially honored by the royal palace for his heroic actions. The ceremony would acknowledge both his protection of Mrs. Siriporn and his life-saving intervention that had protected Captain Somchai from serious injury or death. This unprecedented decision sent shockwaves through Thai society and the international martial arts community. Never before had someone who had physically struck a royal guard been honored rather than punished. The decision demonstrated remarkable wisdom and justice from the Thai leadership, recognizing that true loyalty to the crown meant protecting its citizens and upholding righteousness. Colonel Prasert was tasked with personally delivering this news to Chen, who had been staying quietly at his small apartment while the investigation proceeded. The colonel approached this duty with mixed emotions. Relief that justice was being served, but also amazement at the extraordinary turn of events that had led to this moment. When Chen heard the news, his reaction was characteristically humble and dignified. He expressed gratitude for the fair treatment he had received, but insisted that he had simply done what any decent person should do in that situation. His lack of pride or expectation of reward further impressed Colonel Prasert and reinforced the wisdom of the palace's decision. The royal palace announced that Chen would receive the Medal of Courage, one of Thailand's highest civilian honors, in a ceremony that would be broadcast live across the nation. The news sent waves of excitement through Bangkok and the international martial arts community. Chen would be the first person in Thai history to receive such an honor, after having physical contact with a royal guard, making this ceremony truly historic. Preparations for the ceremony began immediately. Chen's small apartment was flooded with visitors, journalists, martial arts masters from around the world, and former students who wanted to congratulate their beloved teacher. Despite the overwhelming attention, Chen remained focused on his daily routine of meditation and practice, treating the upcoming honor as just another part of life's journey. Mrs. Siriporn was also invited to attend the ceremony as an honored guest. The flower vendor had never imagined she would set foot inside the royal palace, let alone be recognized for her role in this incredible story. She spent days choosing the perfect traditional dress for the occasion, with neighbors and friends helping her prepare for what would be the most important day of her life. Captain Somchai requested permission to personally present Chen with the medal during the ceremony. The captain felt it was important for him to publicly acknowledge the man who had saved his life, despite the initial misunderstanding between them. His superior officers agreed, recognizing that this gesture would demonstrate the Royal Guard's commitment to honoring true heroes regardless of circumstances. The ceremony took place in the Grand Palace's most magnificent hall, with hundreds of dignitaries, government officials, and invited guests in attendance. Chen arrived wearing his finest traditional Thai clothing, walking with the same quiet dignity he had shown throughout this entire ordeal. The sight of this humble karate master entering the palace where kings had been crowned amazed everyone present. As Chen approached the throne area where the medal would be presented, The entire audience rose to their feet in spontaneous applause. The sound echoed through the ancient halls, a thunderous recognition of his courage and character. Chen bowed deeply to show his respect for the honor being bestowed upon him, his eyes glistening with emotion at the overwhelming response. The official ceremony began with a reading of Chen's heroic actions, including his protection of Mrs. Siraporn and his life-saving intervention that had protected Captain Somchai. The formal language of the citation could not fully capture the drama and courage of those moments in the alley, but it properly recognized Chen's selfless character and incredible martial arts skills. When Captain Somchai stepped forward to present the medal, the emotional weight of the moment was visible on both men's faces. The captain spoke briefly about how Chen's actions had not only saved his life, but had also taught him important lessons about judging people based on their character, rather than their appearance. The handshake between the two men symbolized reconciliation and mutual respect. Chen's acceptance speech was brief and heartfelt. He thanked the royal palace for their wisdom and justice in recognizing that his actions had been motivated by a desire to protect others rather than any disrespect for authority. He dedicated the honor to his late sensei, who had taught him that martial arts should always be used in service of righteousness and protection of the innocent. The ceremony concluded with Chen being presented with a formal scroll detailing his honor and a substantial monetary award that he immediately announced would be donated to support underprivileged children's education in Bangkok. This generous gesture, made without any advance planning, further demonstrated his selfless character and commitment to helping others. Following the ceremony, Chen's life changed dramatically. His small dojo became famous throughout Thailand and internationally, attracting students from around the world who wanted to learn from the legendary master who had saved a royal guard's life. However, Chen continued to focus primarily on teaching local children who needed guidance and discipline in their lives. Mrs. Siraporn's flower stand also experienced unexpected prosperity as people sought her out to hear first-hand accounts of Chen's heroic actions. She became a minor celebrity in Bangkok, often appearing on television to tell the story of how an elderly karate master had risked his life to protect her from dangerous criminals. The three criminals who had started this entire chain of events received lengthy prison sentences for their crimes. During their trials, the dramatic security camera footage of Chen's defensive actions was shown repeatedly, serving as a stark reminder of how quickly violence can be met with justice when good people are willing to act. Captain Somchai was promoted to colonel within 6 months of the incident, partly in recognition of his honest handling of the investigation and his mature response to Chen's life-saving actions. He became a regular visitor to Chen's dojo, where he studied martial arts and developed a deep friendship with the man who had taught him so much about courage and character. The story of the karate master who kicked a royal guard and was honored, for it became legendary throughout Thailand and the international martial arts community. Chen's example inspired countless people to stand up for what was right, regardless of potential consequences. His legacy extended far beyond that single moment in a Bangkok alley. Years later, Chen established the Guardian Angel Foundation, using donations from admirers around the world. The foundation provided free martial arts training to disadvantaged youth throughout Southeast Asia, teaching them not just fighting techniques but also the values of respect, discipline, and protecting others. The foundation's motto became, "Strength to protect, wisdom to know when." Chen's story was eventually adapted into books, documentaries, and even a Hollywood movie that brought his message to a global audience. However, he remained humble throughout his newfound fame, continuing to live in his simple apartment and teach at his neighborhood dojo. When reporters asked about his feelings regarding his international celebrity status, he would simply smile and say that the real heroes were the young people he taught who chose to use their skills to help others. The incident also led to important changes in Royal Guard training protocols. New procedures were implemented to help guards better distinguish between threats and heroes in complex situations. Captain Somchai, now Colonel Somchai, became an instructor in these new training programs, often using Chen's story as an example of how quickly situations can change and how important it is to remain flexible in judgment. Mrs. Siraporn eventually retired from selling flowers and became a volunteer at Chen's dojo, helping to prepare meals for the children and sharing her story with new students. She often told them that courage comes in many forms, and that standing up for what is right is always worth the risk. Her friendship with Chen became one of the most treasured relationships in both their lives. The narrow alley where everything began was eventually renamed Hero's Way in honor of Chen's actions. A small plaque was installed at the spot where he had confronted the criminals, reading simply, "On this spot, an ordinary man chose to do an extraordinary thing." Tourists and martial arts enthusiasts from around the world visit the location to pay their respects to the place where one person's courage changed so many lives. Chen's influence extended to international martial arts competitions, where his story became a required study for black belt candidates. His demonstration that martial arts mastery included precise control, protective instinct, and moral courage set new standards for what it meant to be a true martial artist. Fighting schools worldwide adopted his teaching methods and philosophical approaches. The three criminals, after serving their sentences, each sought out Chen to apologize for their actions and thank him for not seriously injuring them, despite having every right to do so. Two of them became students at his dojo, dedicating their lives to making amends for their past by helping other troubled youth find better paths. This transformation demonstrated Chen's belief that everyone deserves a chance at redemption. As Chen entered his 70s, he began training a select group of advanced students to carry on his work and teachings. His method of combining traditional martial arts techniques with modern understanding of conflict resolution and community service became known as the Chen method and was practiced in schools around the world. The Medal of Courage that Chen received remained displayed prominently in his dojo, not as a symbol of his own greatness but as a reminder to his students that true honor comes from using one's abilities to protect and serve others. Beneath the medal, a simple inscription read, "Strength without compassion is meaningless. Compassion without strength is helpless." Chen's story proved that heroes can emerge from the most ordinary circumstances, and that a single moment of courage can inspire positive changes that last for generations. His legacy continued to grow long after that shocking day in a Bangkok alley, when a karate master's kick changed everything, showing the world that sometimes the most unexpected actions lead to the most extraordinary outcomes.